I'd like to welcome everyone to the Heritage Advisory Board meeting of March 30.
Not quite,
I
Ruth.
find it very frustrating.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yeah, sorry. That was practice. We also lost our regular compute laptop that's over here. So this is a new laptop trying to do this. Chris just likes to keep me on my toes.
Hello, how are you? Good. For those of you who are new to this group, we always start every meeting with technical.
It's the official beginning.
We do.
Are we gonna do introductions as a round of this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Cool.
1 minute, because here we go. It wants Ruth to approve it. She's not here.
Sounds nice.
Mhm.
So,
I heard that. Hi, Ruth. I am trying to live stream onto YouTube, and it's saying I need that your Google needs to grant necessary privilege for live streaming. Yeah, do you know what that means? I mean, please grant necessary privilege for live streaming. I'm gonna go back one and see if I can check any boxes here. Okay, if I can't get it, I will take care of that. I'll try it one more time. Heritage tree. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks. Have fun. Bye. Okay, bye. It stumped Ruth too. Okay, we're not going to be able to live stream. So I'm gonna put your meeting up and you can carry on, Ruth. All right.
Okay, thank you. Once again, I'd like to welcome everybody to well, I'm not sure if it's the first meeting. I think it's the first meeting of the Heritage Street Committee. It's March 30th, 2022. And welcome everyone here. Thank you. And I wonder if we could begin with the introductions. I'm Ruth Causey. I'm a city councilor and chairman of the Public Works Committee, which seems to be why I got this honor, but it might be entirely appropriate for someone else, perhaps Gianna, to lead this group as well, unless you prefer not to, but whatever.
You're doing such a good job.
I
I mean, if you don't want to,
No, it's fine either way.
I also don't know what's involved, what is involved.
Oh, okay. Well, by the end of the meeting, you'll probably see.
Okay.
It's the same as most meetings. But anyway, let's go ahead and begin with the introductions. As I said, I'm Britt Causey.
Kevin Fear, Flow Public Works Director.
Gary Black, Public Works Supervisor.
John Simonson, the OC Department of Public Safety and Police.
Gianna Bernardini, person at large.
Graham Cedars. Not a person at large.
Matt Lehman, I'm also on the city council.
Okay.
And I am Eric Wiggins, local arborist.
Oh, welcome, everyone. Okay. Well, I think we just have one order of business tonight, which is to decide if these trees should be designated as Philomath heritage trees. And I want to commend all the nominees who put together some wonderful information on the trees and great photos. And maybe we can discuss each tree in order and,
I can't hear you very well back here.
oh, I'm
We're
sorry.
hard hearing.
Perhaps we could discuss each tree in order and just take comments as to whether you think they should or should not be designated as a heritage tree. So with that, the first tree is the Philomath Library tree, which is in front of the library on the corner of 11th and Applegate. I believe it's an elm tree, although the nomination form did not indicate. Does anyone have any comments about that tree?
I can identify the tree.
Awesome.
Okay. Please do.
It's an American elm.
Okay. And I think it's, do you have any idea how old it might be?
My guess would be it would be in the 70s.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There was an article that came out, it was maybe a year ago about it, was talking about that tree being maybe the first nomination for the Heritage Tree Program. And in that article, they had said it was estimated to be about 120 years old.
Yes, I remember
Was
that.
that a guess, or is that associated with any like landmarks or planting or?
I don't expect it was scientifically based. I know the,
Yeah.
120,
Yep.
70, 120.
Got it.
It's old. Probably older than all of us in this room.
But somebody, did that 100, who came up with that 120 number and where did they get that number? I mean, do you think it was just,
I would have to go back and reread the article. I believe Jeff Lamb, who has since passed away, he was involved in building the library.
that's right.
And he had estimated at the time that maybe it was 100 years old, but I don't know how he determined how old it was. But I can look back and see if there was anything more credible than that.
Graham is also an arborist, and if you had to take a spitball shot.
I would definitely agree more with Eric than 120. I think it's definitely in the 60 to 80 year old range.
That's helpful.
It doesn't have the characteristics that a lot of older trees have at this point, so.
Can you tell us what those characteristics would be? What would it look like as an older tree?
It is somewhat species dependent. Some trees will show that age a lot sooner. You'll see generally like deeper fissured bark on an elm tree, like you'll just see, because it holds onto its bark for so many years, there'll be a lot more of that built up. You know, depending on the conditions it's growing in, it could, you know, there might be, you know, a great contrast tree would be the oak tree that's on the list on Grange Hall Road. There's, you know, large limb failures that happened a long time ago, lots of compartmentalization of old wounds, and it just lots more featuring to it. And with younger trees, you have a little bit more of a symmetrical growth structure because they haven't had as much time to lose limbs and regenerate limbs and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of hard to determine a tree's age without actually drilling a hole in it and measuring the rings. And so it just.
I noticed that, thank you very much. I'm generally curious about the subject because I love trees, but don't know as much about them as I could. But I noticed that one of the applicants used either the diameter, the circumference, and the species. If you have those two pieces of information, can you make a reasonable estimate or no?
I would say the younger the tree is, the more accurate an estimate like that is going to be, because you can look at, you can even see annual growth in younger trees. But over time, those characteristics are lost as the branches get larger and all of the new growth is out at the tips of the canopy. So it just, you know, for a young conifer, you can kind of gauge based on like the you know, the whorls of the limbs are somewhat associated with
Oh,
a
yeah.
year of growth, those sort of things. So for younger trees, yes, older trees, not nearly as much.
Okay, great, thank you. So any other comments about this particular tree? Is there anyone who might be opposed to designating it as a heritage tree? I think it is of significance to the city because apparently quite an effort was made to preserve it when the library was built.
Yeah, I really like that description, actually, just the fact that this is a tree that is far more at risk of being removed because it's inconvenient. And the fact that there was that much effort put into trying to preserve it, and it has stayed relatively healthy over the last, what is it, 15? I don't know. how many
15 or
years it's
20
been,
years since-
15 plus years since then, it seems to still be doing fairly well. And so I would love to see that tree get some recognition that would keep it from getting removed in future projects. So
Excellent. Okay, so I think that one's a yes. Let's move on to the giant sequoia at 1101 Main Street. This is probably the one tree that most people in town are familiar with as the town Christmas tree. And I very much enjoyed the description and the proposal to name the tree. I thought that was very well done. Any other comments, questions?
I nominated that.
Did you?
I'd like to talk a little.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Jackie McDougal Weiner, and I've been in this area now for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was a National Park Ranger at Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks in California in the High Sierras. And when I came here, because my relatives are here, I couldn't even drive because everywhere I looked, I saw a young sequoia. They're everywhere between Eugene and Hillsborough. And they're all, none of them are naturally grown, they're all landscapes. So I got really curious, but they're I can spot them a mile away because of this. I think you know trees well. And so I wanted to learn more about how they got here. And in 1847, a man named Potter came on the Oregon Trail and came to Hillsborough. He ended up going to California Sierras for the gold rush, like so many people came here for. Although that's not why he came here. He had a nursery in Hillsborough. And he was very unsuccessful with gold, but he found these huge mammoth trees. My favorite tree is the General Grant tree. It's 40 feet in diameter. And he found the cones. And he stuffed all the cones, as many as he could, in his saddlebags, and he took them back home to Hillsborough and started growing them in his nursery. And in 1880, he planted 8 of them at the courthouse in Hillsborough, which they're still there. They were the first ones there. I'm sure the big one that was cut down before I came here was legacy to that. Quite possibly the one at the museum is legacy to that original tree. It is a heritage tree in Hillsborough. And the beginning of all the sequoias here, which are everywhere, but they're all babies. So for me, it was like bothersome because everybody was calling them cedars. And if you go to a baseball game at Oregon State, the announcer says, oh, there goes a home run over left field over those giant cedar trees. And there's sequoias. So I was curious about the history here. I went to the museum. They had no idea. I called the city, no idea, even though the city planted that tree. And I thought, what's wrong? We're losing the history. I was a historian at Sequoia and Kings as well as an educator there. So I'm discovering what's wrong with this picture. We're already losing something that, you know, people are using as the Christmas tree here. By the way, the official United States Christmas tree living is the General Grant tree. And they celebrate it every year. And it's also our only living shrine to our war dead. It's not called the Christmas tree. It's not called the shrine for the war dead. It's just is celebrated on those times. It's a General Grant tree. Named because they weren't even discovered until the 1860s. And that's when the Civil War was. So those were the heroes of the time. What's different about it, besides the oldest one documented living was 3,500 years old, is they're cousins to, of course, the coastal redwood and then the Dawnwood redwood in China. But the tannic acid is what makes them live so long. If you ever go to the Sequoia or Kings Canyon National Parks, go on a tour, ask the question, why, when they fall down? You know, what happened? A good ranger would tell you because they're bored. And they rarely fall. Unfortunately, last year was the first year that we lost giant ones, adults, mature ones, to air pollution and to the bark beetle. That's never happened before, ever. They're in the worst polluted park in the entire nation. Most people go to the mountains, say, let me breathe the air. And I'm saying, I lost a husband and a sister to lung cancer. And many of the park rangers, that's what's going on. But when I saw this one, I wanted to know, okay, it's obviously not real old, but still very pointy. You know, I guessed it'd be about 50, just because average is about a foot a year. Although there's a 57-year-old tree in the Grant Grove, which is no taller than I am. It's location, location, location. This one's in a perfect location. It's the learning, town of learning, the love of learning. Being an educator, why I nominated it had nothing to do with its age. It's about 48. I talked to Chris Chenard, and he is the one who picked it out. But nobody knows the history. It's not written. It's not even written. So it's lost to the city and it's lost to the museum. Yet we celebrate Christmas with it. To me, it was an opportunity, being an educator, to make it more than just a heritage tree. To me, it was giving legacy to our youth. I don't care about old trees anymore. I'm old. I'm off, you know, I'm off. But how cool would it be to have the children learn about trees in a place where they should be going anyway? And I used to go into schools all the time when I wasn't working and do history days and all about the sequoias. All the kids groups came up. I did all of them. And actually, the kids that came up, they were more interested in the squirrel, but they'd never seen that before. They were in the city. But my intent would be to go into the schools here and talk to them about the history of stuff, but bring that in as well, so that we have the generations, not our generations. We need to be getting the children excited about something, and that's something to me that offers that possibility. I'm a bit passionate about it. But they're dying. They're dying. They're dying. And we've got them here, and they are thriving for their age. They are thriving. And we won't see anything that looks like, I always call them giants, broccoli plants, like a big broccoli or something, or asparagus, but if it doesn't go through with that, I would hope that somehow it could be figured out a different way and not referred to as the Christmas tree, because it's going to be more than that. And it's more than that to the youth of our town.
Thank you so much for your passion, Jackie, and for nominating the tree, and for coming to Philomath, and for sharing all of that information with us. I think it would be hard not to nominate this one as a heritage tree. I'd have an awfully hard time doing that. And I think it is worthy of naming it a heritage learning tree, given its species and its location. Are there any other comments?
I have a comment.
Oh, please go ahead.
I really don't think it justifies heritage status myself. Sequoias are nice. They do grow here well. There are many. This tree has already afforded a certain amount of protection just because it's on the grounds of the museum. It's well back from any highway improvements, anything that's going on underground. It's going to be left alone for a long period of time. I rather doubt the museum will have any expansion plans that would reach the road or anywhere near it. It's not very old. I realize it is decorated for Christmas. I just don't think it reaches heritage status personally.
Well, I think I would counter that, and you may not be aware of this, but there are a number, or 4 locations in town that are being considered for festival sites. And one of them is the lawn in front of the museum. And I would think that designating this tree as a heritage tree would help ensure that it would not be disturbed in the course of developing that area, even though you might not be able to see the band if you happen to be sitting behind the tree. But I think also it's probably the best known tree in the city, because most of us drive by it every day. But you're right, it's not terribly old, but I think it is terribly significant. But if you wish, we could take a vote on it. Yes, Gianna.
Well, I think Eric brings up a really key point that we haven't yet really contended with, which is what makes something worthy of being a heritage tree. And you can legitimately argue any number of things. I mean, it could be that only the largest, biggest, oldest, most interesting trees make it. Or it could be something more. Or it could be there are other values. And as currently stated, as John so helpfully brought up, that we chose to include in the nomination criteria being of significance to the community. I mean, for that reason, the elm in front of the library isn't, I mean, it's a beautiful elm, but it's not very old either. It's big, it's not huge. To me, the elm and this tree that we're talking about now, both, I think, warrant inclusion simply for their importance to the community. And I feel like Ms. Weiner really eloquently spoke to what that tree could become. And because it is well situated to get much older, this takes a bit of imagination in terms of what this program could be. And in 100 years, that could be an amazing looking tree. But it won't be unless we call it a heritage tree today. Because there's an incredibly good chance that at some point within the next 20 years, who knows what kind of development is going to happen along Main Street. And I feel like the odds that somebody might say, you know what, it's not that old of a tree. It's fine, we can lose this one.
Also, from my understanding, heritage status isn't granted any protections. It's just a title.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
I would argue that just saying that a tree is a heritage tree, even if it doesn't like provide any legal protection, it does assign value to it, that like it does give some protection just because it might have a plaque next to it, or might be on a list somewhere where people go look at it. So it kind of ups the community value of it. And so, it doesn't prevent things from happening there, but there are some trees on the list that I kind of want to put in there just so that there is a moment's pause before they're cut down because they're inconvenient. And I think that part of the benefit of this program as a whole is actually just helping our community see the value of these trees, and hopefully keep them for another generation.
I agree. All right, any other comments? All right, I would like to propose that we designate this sequoia as a heritage tree. And would you like to take a vote on it, or?
Let's do, just to
Yeah.
make it clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
we should vote.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. With that, let's move on to the Mary's Park Sequoia Grove. And Gianna, I want to, whoops, I'm sorry. That's yours.
We're gonna leave you all to your term
Okay.
meeting. I just wanted to.
Thank you for coming and thank you for contributing.
Good luck. Beautiful trees on this list.
Let's see, Gianna, did you want to speak to this grove of trees?
Well, I nominated this one, and to be honest, this one is not like, if folks voted this one down, it wouldn't crush me. I like the fact that this little patch of trees that it contains there are only 3 species of redwoods, and it contains all of them. Dawn redwoods are a really interesting species. They're a whole sort of rediscovery in China, and they're not rare now, but I think they're interesting. I also like the connection that this grove has to the Philomath High School and to the class of 58, is it? 56. The Philomath class of 56. So I like keeping it as, I think it was a very cool thing for them to have done, and I'd like to ensure that we honor that gift to the city. Again, I also don't think this one is in great danger. It's in the middle of the park, so I doubt anyone's gonna take them down. But I don't know. I think they're worth.
Do you know, is there any signage or anything?
There's quite a bit of signage, which is really nice. There are signs sort of along the pathway that kind of describe the species there,
Awesome.
which is great, you know, so.
We have extra signage. Marlon Weaver. He dropped them off. We got some vandalism on them lately.
Oh,
We
okay.
replaced a couple.
Seriously?
So we've replaced a couple in the last 6 months.
Gotcha.
It's the last, he had them made. He had duplicates of everything made.
Hmm.
When they get damaged, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Right.
Because he told me him and his group are a little senior now,
Yeah.
and they're not able to get out to the park anymore.
Right.
I've talked to them multiple times, and they used to come out and do clean up around the trees every
Sure.
year. They're not doing that anymore.
Gotcha.
What kind of vandalism?
They took one of the disc golf things and they bent a couple of the signs here back in September. October.
Hmm,
I can get you pictures. I got them.
That's disappointing.
It's full. We got a lot of those. We don't hear about it.
I don't know if, for me, this grove of trees really matches the criteria for the Heritage Tree Program. Like I like trees, I like that, you know, community members took the time and effort to plant trees and create something memorable, but they don't really seem like a significant landmark at this point. They're not native trees, they're not, you know, particularly old or anything like that, so I think I would probably, at this point, probably just vote to not have them on that and try to like retain the focus of what the Heritage Tree Program is trying to accomplish.
You know, as an arborist, I'd like to ask the two of you, because whenever I go by these trees, I wonder if they are planted too closely together, because some of them are going to get really large.
I thought that too. They are packed in there, but it's like, I assume they knew what they were doing.
I did talk to Marla Weaver. What happened back in the day when they planted them is they lost a lot of them first couple of years and they replanted. That's why there's different heights and different sizes. So I think they were trying to make sure, if I remember right, my conversation with them, they were fill-ins. So I think that's why they are pretty tight.
Like a little,
They are a little tight.
thinned as a, in 200 years.
We haven't lost
it may be
any in a
thinning.
while. In the last 10 or so years, but before that, they were losing quite a bit.
They won't need any thinning before the people that they represented, so probably not.
Be long gone.
So there won't be any hurt feelings about, no, you cut my tree.
Any other comments about these trees?
Their proximity may lead to some of them dying for lack of being able to compete as they start to stretch out underground.
Mhm.
I have a question for the arborists of the group. That is a floodway area. Are those in danger? If we get another 2012 or 1996, would those get damaged from those kind of floods?
Last November.
Or last November? Are those trees that would be susceptible to damage?
Depends on how long they sit in the water and how deep it is.
I mean, 1996, that park was flooded for probably 2 weeks. All the way up to Applegate Street. So would that be an issue?
I think that could be an issue.
Yeah, it depends on if the water continues to move or not. If it becomes more stagnant, it'll smother them.
It's basically,
But moving water continues to aerate, although it will cause some compaction over time.
I'm assuming that trees of this size are too large to be moved. Is that correct?
They're
Costly.
too large to be worth moving, I would say.
Yes.
It's very expensive to move trees that large, and it doesn't always work, often doesn't, so.
Okay.
Save that for the tree that you really have to move, because it's the true heritage tree. You don't want to try to move a tree that large.
Okay.
Large tree movers never give you any kind of a guarantee.
Right, yeah.
Okay, never mind. Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, kind of along the lines of what everybody's saying, it's in the natural area park. And I know we did some activity in the park and I thought fire and brimstone was going to rain down from the skies. So I can't imagine a scenario where it's going to be, hey, let's just cut down all those trees and we can build something there. I just don't see it. But I like the idea of recognizing it, and that's why I asked about the signage. If there's already signage and everything up there, I don't know what more the heritage tree program is going to lend to it. I'm not necessarily against it. I just don't know if it's going to have the intended consequence or impact. Yeah, that's not consequence, but yeah.
No, I think I agree with you. If it didn't have the signs already, I think it would be worth
Right.
acknowledging them because of these cool factors, but it is already there.
Right. And as you can tell, I have not taken the opportunity to wander through that part of the park over there. So
It's neat.
yeah, I definitely am going to now.
Then
Okay.
this was worth having this
Exactly.
discussion.
Okay, any other comments? All right, all those in favor of designating this grove as a grove of heritage trees, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay, all opposed? Nay. Okay.
I know. Oh, well. Seemed a good idea to check.
It was a good idea. It's definitely worth considering.
It's helpful to have more trees to consider rather than only a few,
Yeah.
I think.
All right, the next tree is the white oak on Grange Hall Road. And Gianna, this is also one of your nominations. Do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, this one I'll go to the map for sure. I put this tree up against any tree anybody's gonna bring forward ever. This is just hands down the coolest tree we have. I love this tree. I love everything about it. I spoke with the owner about it and she knows a great deal of its history. She brought out photos and all kinds of things for me to look at. I didn't even include all of the stuff that she told me. One thing I forgot to mention in the write-up is that I guess every year there are bees that nest in the trunk, several hives a year. And folks from the bee lab at OSU come out and take samples as for wild honeybees and are doing something with the genetics to try to help, as far as to help bolster the resilience of our honeybee population. So it currently is filling in that capacity as well. The thing that's nice is that it is extremely old and that we do have proof, that we've got a physical, anybody can see it and document it. I also had somebody from the Oregon Historical Society, and she also found information and got back to me that confirmed stuff. She had photos as well. It's not the most beautiful tree. It's not, there are other oaks in town that are much more attractive. But that's what happens when you get old. I'll just say.
Christopher, who's on here, did have a good point. Is this within the city limits?
No, it is not. It is, but this tree we had in mind, which was exactly why I had this tree in mind when we were setting this up, and I was like, this tree very clearly, it belongs to the Philomath, the greater Philomath area, which is why originally Chris had said it 2 miles from, it was something like a 2-mile boundary,
Something like that.
something
Yeah.
like that. But you're right to ask, because then I saw something that said something about the urban growth boundary more recently, which I don't think it is.
It was written into the ordinance, it's 2 miles from the urban growth boundary. It is.
Okay,
That's what ended up being passed and put into the ordinance. It
Okay.
started as the urban growth boundary.
Because it's not in the urban growth boundary either.
no,
You had no information on well, you have 500 years plus. Do the arborists agree with that? That's a long time.
It is a very old tree.
Is
It
it?
is, it is. Yeah.
Would you
Like
think
what I
it-
said before, it also has large cavities in the base of it. So it'd be very hard to determine its exact age, but it is a very old tree. For comparison, I counted the rings on an Oregon white oak that got cut down several years ago in Corvallis. That was maybe less than 2/3 the diameter of that tree, and it was 230 years old. So,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, it's hard to, I don't know, 500 years is a long time, even for an oak tree. I don't think that that's impossible, but somewhere between, I would say, 500 to that 250 range. So it's an ancient tree
Mhm.
by any standards.
I'd say 500 is a stretch.
Okay. But still.
But still,
Oh, it's old. It's old. On a side note, I think I know the guy that dropped it was actually it wasn't a chainsaw. It was a pole saw that was down in the middle of it.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's Tom Cafazzo.
Oh,
Yeah, it was 25, 30 years ago.
that's hilarious.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't a chainsaw because he had visions of people trying to go in there and get the chainsaw.
Oh, you wouldn't want it now anyway.
Yeah.
Good.
I would like to measure I keep thinking of how to do it, to measure the diameter, because it's very,
without getting poison oak, you mean?
exactly.
That's the tough part right there, the poison oak.
Ring and then like, you know, but it's just, yeah, it's completely covered with.
Well, they make circumference tape measures. I have one of those.
Yeah, no, I have a tape measure.
Eric,
It's
would
just,
you like to go measure that tree for us?
If I didn't get poison oak really bad, I would be happy to.
exactly. It can be done, it can be done.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is a cavity in the middle of it, is it in danger? Is it help? Is it at risk? Or is that just a natural?
Well, it's pretty natural. It weakens the stem, but in a tree that old and that species, it'd have to be 80% rotten. And I don't think it's got 80%. It's probably 60%.
Oh,
And
really?
it's not cavity, it's mush, but there's no strength.
Huh.
If you wanted to, or the property owner wanted to find that out, there are tools that you can use to measure
Yes.
the, the ratio of decayed wood to healthy live tissue, so you can get a better assessment of how stable it is from that. So, like Eric said, I don't think that tree is a likely tree to fall over anytime soon. It seems like it has a good canopy for its age, and it is, it's relatively balanced, but it does have a large cavity at the base. It has large wounds up higher in the canopy as well. It's also been cabled in the past, so at some point the property owner hired someone to install cables in the tree to reduce the likelihood of it breaking apart. And so
Oh,
that's, you know, it has kind of been managed for that in the past. Whether that's still functioning the way it should be or not is, it would need a little bit more inspection, but it's,
wow.
you know, if it was next to a structure or somewhere besides just on an open stretch of road, it'd be probably a good idea to do some further investigation on it. And given where it is, I think it's fine.
Is there anything that can be done to slow the deterioration of the tree?
No.
Just leave it alone.
Yep, leave it be.
Look at it from a distance and wave at it, and don't drive near it, and don't, just leave it alone.
Okay,
Maybe you could mulch around it or something if you wanted to have it, but not much.
I'm afraid that would probably only encourage the poison oak, perhaps not have the
Actually, if
tree.
you leave the poison oak there, that's probably the best deterrent.
That's true.
That keeps people away.
Because it keeps it from getting vandalized, even if it gets recognized as a heritage tree,
Huh.
which will cause more traffic around it. People are gonna go find it and see what it is. But if you have that kind of natural barrier there, it's gonna make it much less likely that people are gonna try to climb it or, you know, tag it with graffiti or what, you know, any of that kind of stuff that could happen. So
Maybe you can point out that it's poison oak.
Yeah, put a sign on there. This is a heritage tree and this is poison oak.
Exactly.
This is heritage.
A natural moat.
All right.
Would it be helpful to get that cookie to look at? I mean,
sorry, what?
there is, so that age, it's that,
Oh, from that branch.
it's the branch,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
broken one right there. That one 15 feet out. Or so. And she said she has, there's one at the Historical Society, there's a cookie at the Historical Society, and there's also one in her attic. And she said that's what they counted on. And I mean, that was a branch, that wasn't the trunk, that was a branch that had 500 rings. Which sounds insane to me, I've never seen that, I've never heard of that. I mean,
Well, a lot of people don't know how to correctly count rings because there are essentially two rings. There's a light ring and a dark ring. One is early wood and one is late wood.
Mhm.
So you have to be really careful when you're counting rings. Especially on wood that's higher up from the ground. The higher you go, the more years you lose in age.
right,
But a side branch would not be indicative of the tree's entire age.
would it be
It's also
helpful?
very hard to count rings on old, like an Oregon white oak that's really.
They're
old.
tight.
They're so tight. You would have to be very careful. Like it can, if you have to be very careful to do it. So I think that if this tree does get nominated, having a photo of that section, which is unusual to have for a tree that you're preserving, would be really cool to include if there's, you know, at least a photo of that.
Like,
Or, yeah, some sort of, yeah, I mean, if we could determine that it is actually 500 growth rings on that limb, that's pretty impressive, so. Is this a tree that, even though it's outside of the growth boundary, is this one that we could still include?
yes.
Yeah, it's within 2 miles of.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah. And it's certainly a landmark. I mean, I had to go to Carolyn's house for a meeting one time and the directions were get on Grange Hall and then find the biggest tree and that's her driveway. Like, it was pretty easy.
What's funny though, is that like at the Historical Society, she sent me some photos, she's old pictures. And she said, oh, I think I found these pictures of you. And they were photos of the tree across the street.
Hmm.
The one that's kind of eating the gate,
Right.
which is bigger and looks nicer. I mean, it looks bigger.
Right.
But it's not actually, that one is one on the other side, this one that's kind of a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, in this photo, it's those ones left. Those
Right.
there.
Yeah.
It's also a really big tree, but it's not the same as this one.
All right, any other comments? All those in favor of nominating this white oak as a heritage trees, please raise your hand and say aye.
I,
Aye.
I,
Thank you. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Our next tree is the cedar on Applegate, which was nominated by Rachel Bruce. Do any of you want to comment on this tree?
I do. This was, when we started this program, this was the first tree I actually thought of. Because, you know, just walking your kids back and forth to school, you go by there and you see it and you're like, how on earth did that happen? Did they cultivate this kind of a thing, or is it just, they just won the lottery, or what's the deal? I think it's super cool, and the reason why I would like to make it a heritage tree is that it is right on the corner of Applegate and 15th Street, so it seems like it might be a tree that would come into question if there's some redevelopment going on down there. So,
yeah, it's in harm's way.
Green town, so
yeah,
What?
I think it's the coolest tree in town, right? I mean, I drive a lot, I'm home for a lot. It's a tree I always draw my.
Right. Yeah.
Much discussion on this one so far.
I would, if this tree gets included, I would like to see some better pictures for the.
right. Get
We
like
should
a
talk about these.
photographer.
These are, you know,
Later.
it's at sunset, it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
what's going on with this
Agreed.
tree, so.
Does this particular species often grow like this with these huge branches?
If it is a Theodore cedar, which I'm assuming it is, they tend to have one central leader more often, rather than all of these codominant stems to it. So that's a little bit unusual for the species. If it's actually a Lebanese cedar instead, that's exactly what they look like all the time. So
Okay.
they're really similar, looking, very closely
Yeah,
related.
the Atlas cedar has a similar structure naturally.
What do our arborists think? That, I don't know. I won't even tell you what I thought it was. So, so when I just assumed that the homeowner knew the species. Would either of you be able to verify that?
I drove by and looked at it just the other day. It looks like a deodar, but I couldn't actually get hands-on. The easiest way to tell if it's either an Atlas or a deodar is to touch the needles. If they're soft, it's a deodar. If they're pokey like a spruce, then it's an Atlas. And there are both green and blue Atlas cedars, and they have that very competitive bowl structure. But deodars, when they're young, you could have the top damaged somehow, and the side limbs would create a competitive structure like that. But it would be when it was young, very young.
Do you think it's really only at 85 years old? It's such a huge tree.
It's not any older than that.
No,
It's definitely not older than the house.
Wow.
They just,
yeah,
they just get really big.
mhm.
Kind of that's what they do.
They like it here.
Is there any possible damage with the power lines? Because they're gonna have to keep trimming it. And the power company's gonna come in and do what they do, obviously. And they had it trimmed up a couple of years ago, it looks beautiful. But is there any possible potential damage to the power lines right next to it? And the power company coming in and breaking the tree like they do?
Damage from the utility pruning, not really. I mean, they're maintaining it for their 10 feet of.
Well, you know, they don't really give you a chance to, you know, debate this tree. How are we going to, how do we stop that as a, if we make this a heritage tree and the power company comes and says, hey, we need to trim it? How do we? I don't know how we stop that. 'Cause we
Well,
got
the
power line.
power company has the power to do it, but they haven't headed any of those leaders adjacent to the transmission lines. All they've done is window the sides, and as long as they continue to cut those side branches and they don't knock any of those leaders off, then the tree will pretty much be fine. It's already recovered from them doing it, I don't know how many times, 6 times probably over the years, maybe more.
They're just not very gentle about some trees when they get into them. So.
Yep.
Maybe if there's a crack on it, they'll,
Hopefully.
they'll pause a little.
They
Oh,
have
yeah.
Specific requirements for what kind of clearance they need to get. So depending, the power company hires a contractor to do that pruning work. So currently in our area, it's Wright Tree Service, which is like a big international company. And depending on which contractor they hire, you might get a different experience of what that line clearance pruning is like. So,
Mhm.
with Wright Tree Service, from what I understand, they, for the most part, hire ISA certified arborists for a lot of their pruning work, and they seem to be more conscionable than other utility line clearance
Would
companies.
a
that I've
youth, would
experienced.
a heritage tree sign make them think about it, or would there be other steps they'd have to do?
Sometimes with the power company, they will pay to remove a tree on private property because it's less maintenance over time. Usually they don't do that. They don't decide to do that unless the tree is unsafe for some reason, say that tree died, then they would push for doing that because all of a sudden it's threatening their infrastructure. But if the homeowner wanted to do that, sometimes depending on their budget, they'll cut down the tree for them without charging the person. So if it was a heritage tree, that might become a factor for them.
Yeah.
But there's really nothing that we could do to keep them from getting the maintenance pruning that they're already doing. And they've pruned this numerous times already. They seem content with the amount of clearance that's there. I would be really surprised if they came back and decided that they needed to start taking large leaders out of a tree like that.
That's good to know.
It is a healthy tree, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So do they not go to the city, like when the power company, when they prune, do they not come to?
They
public
sent
works
us
and
a
say,
letter saying they're coming into town to prune
Yeah,
They
that's
don't
about
say
it.
typically where, they're just in general?
general area, right?
Sometimes,
Sometimes.
but usually it's just they'll be in town trimming.
Mhm.
Maybe that would be your opportunity, I guess, to be like, if you're doing that one over there, be careful.
Well, sometimes we don't know where. They said, we're coming to town to trim.
Right. Just be like,
They used to have trees.
go easy on 50th at Applegate.
Well, it's kind of nice that our shops are that close to it, so we can,
See them.
You'll
a
be
lot of
around.
people see them, we go by it quite a bit, so.
I would think if they start hatching on this one, somebody's gonna call somebody real quick and say, hey,
It's true.
It is.
It's unlikely to get away with much.
yeah.
Well, we could make it known to Pacific Power as well,
Yeah.
and they would disseminate it down. Because on their software, they can designate anything they want on the tree that is on the list to be pruned.
Good point.
But one thing I have done for clients that have trees that are near utilities is because they're concerned about the power company coming in and pruning them for all of their clearance, we will prune those trees preemptively in a way that is not maybe not quite to within the specs that the power company would prune it, but the tree still looks a lot better than that. And the goal of that is that it doesn't show up on their priority list of a tree that is needing maintenance, right? Because they've got a budget that they're spending in an area. And so they'll go through, have their estimators go through and tag all of the sites that need that pruning done, based on the ones that need it the most. And the next one, might wait for the next, round 2 years later for the lower priority ones. And so, in this situation, that's not really a consideration, but if there's other trees that come up, could potentially have an arborist prune them and maintain those trees so that it doesn't really get on Pacific Power's radar.
Right. I like that.
Okay. Any other thoughts about this tree? All those in favor of nominating the cedar as a heritage tree, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, nominated unanimously. And our last one is a black cottonwood in Marys River Park.
It's actually on the end of South 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not far maybe.
It's not in the park, right?
Okay. At the end of South.
Where does the park, where is the?
Park
edge of the
stays
park?
on this side of the creek or ditch. So
Okay, so it's just to that side. What about like the beach?
The beach,
that
we own up
considered?
to the center of the river, right?
It still would be.
It's still managed by ODFW.
So is the beach considered part of the park or no?
District,
No, sorry, the beach, like where you, when you go over the bridge and then,
it would be
Yeah, we
city.
considered it because it's in the river, which is owned and ran by the state, so.
The entrance to that is on the other side of the creek, so it wouldn't be in the park. From my understanding of that.
wow, that's interesting. I had no idea. I didn't realize the boundaries of the park. Okay.
All right. Are there any comments about this particular tree?
I did find out from our engineer as part of our water improvement projects, our new intake will not affect this tree.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
It's gonna be to the east of this tree. Yeah, to the east.
Hopefully as far as possible to the east.
I think it said 30 feet.
To the east.
Yeah, it's to the west, yeah, to the east.
What are they doing?
Put a new intake down the river for our water.
So
treatment.
is that like a trench with a pipe laid?
It'll be an actual building.
Okay,
It'll have pumps that go down into the river. And then there'll be pipes that go out to our water treatment plant.
So 30 feet off of the trunk is where the line's gonna go?
It's at 30+ feet, so.
Wow, that's pretty close. That's inside the drip line.
that can and will affect that tree, absolutely.
Yes.
It is anything like a trench or anything like that. is-
Well, I will check with him to make sure those numbers are right, but he did say he believed it'd be significant in a way, it wouldn't be an issue, so.
Hmm.
You know, if they could bore under, that's an option. But it's expensive relative to just getting a excavator in there and digging a trench.
I'll find out the exact numbers, but I think he told me it was far enough away, so.
Further's better.
As soon as this came in, it was the day I was talking to the engineer, I was like, uh-oh, you might want to check that out, so.
So what, the area that's considered the, like the critical root zone or the significant area around a tree is in general between 1 and 1.5 times the canopy diameter or the diameter of the tree. So if this is,
Yeah.
if this is a 78-inch diameter tree, we're talking about an area that is, 78 to 120 feet away from the base of the tree is the root zone of that tree that can be affected by compaction and trenching.
If
And
you're talking 120 feet, you're almost talking Marys River Park. And I know that intake's going in there between the two. So
you can think of it like,
that might be an issue with this tree.
so it's worth looking into more and finding out. That could down the road cause fatal issues for this tree, so.
How big's the line going in? 12 inches, 14?
Those lines are
I think they're 212s.
212s.
Yeah. Well, boring would be a really good option, but boy, it's probably not in the budget.
Well, so the line would pass 30 feet from the tree.
He told me that, so that if you look at this picture here, you can see this tree.
Yeah.
The intake's gonna be down over to the left of it,
Mhm.
whatever, it's the east of it. So the intake structure will be right there, and there'll be two pipes that come up towards the water treatment plant. Up this gravel road that's here, this gravel area, so. It won't be going this way, it'll be this way, but if it's 120 feet around it, I don't know if we're gonna make it. So. That could be an issue.
How much is underground until, or
Well, there's
the
a
pipes
physical
stay
building.
underground the whole way?
The pipes will be underground the whole way, but there'll be a physical building at the river.
I had no idea. I knew that there were gonna be intake pipes. I didn't realize there was gonna be a building.
Yeah, you have to have pumps and stuff.
How big is the building?
I don't know if we've seen the final drawing on it, probably be a 5x5 or 10x10 or something, whatever.
So like a shed, sort of a.
Yeah, kind of shed.
A pump house.
Pump house, they'll have three large pumps in it. That'll pump, river or water from the river to the water treatment plant. There will be a significant amount of trees lost in this area because of it.
Mhm.
This tree here, this is a beautiful tree. I haven't looked at it yet. they're down myself. Well, that's cool. But I hope the intake is not gonna be a problem.
Seems like the multi-million-dollar municipal water source improvement should take precedence in my mind over this. If it's, not saying remove the tree or anything, but
It's a risk.
It's a risk.
I think it's acknowledging that,
we could
you know,
still
maybe it
recognize
doesn't change that project, because there are other considerations here that are significant. But it's worth acknowledging that that likely will affect this tree.
Yeah.
And it should, it can potentially destabilize it. So I think that should at least be noted. And
Yeah.
if there are ways that are not cost prohibitive to adjust the project, it's worth considering those for sure.
What's involved in the boring that you described?
They do it all the time now. I mean, Albany, they ran a water line under the Willamette from North Albany over toward where Bryant Park is. I mean, it was expensive and it was big rigs, but I think they ran a 14-inch main under the river. Took them a while, but that was a long way.
So I'm just not sure what you're describing. So does that mean the pipes would just go down very deep to avoid tree roots and then go over?
Well, they go back away from the root zone, depending. The critical zone, I would say, with that tree would probably be the top 2.5 feet of the soil structure. And they would want to go down to maybe 3 or 4 foot. And then they could go down under that and then they can come back up over by the river. But they would probably need to go underground for probably, minimum of 100 feet, maybe 150 feet. Starting away, because they can't, it has to be a nice gradual. They can't cut right angles or anything. It's just a long kind of a bend down to where they need, and then they run for a ways, and then they come shallow again up to whatever they need on the other end.
Yeah.
Pioneer's doing it all over town right now to hook people up to fiber.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the same
difference is
concept,
you
just a
can't
bigger
use it
machine.
It's smaller scale.
You can't just use an excavator to dig a trench and lay a pipe in. You have to bore underneath the tree and tunnel, so excavation
Oh, okay.
contractors do this fairly regularly, but it's just much more expensive equipment.
Mhm.
And consuming.
It's getting cheaper all the time because they're using it a lot, but still larger pipes require bigger equipment.
How deep will the pipes be now?
What's that?
How deep will the pipes be?
with the elevation, maybe about the bottom of the river or lower.
Could you find out what it would cost?
I
to
think
do
before
this?
this tree gets yayed or nayed, we need to do some more research, because if you're saying 120 feet circumference canopy,
Yes.
gotta be where that intake's gonna be. I would hate to say, let's nominate it, and then in a year we have to take it out, because it can't be, that'd be waste on our time, so.
Okay.
Well, I think the building would be less of an effect than the trench.
Right. Well, it's the digging
Right.
through all the whole root system
Yes.
to get down that
Yes.
4, 5, 6, whatever feet you need to put the pipe in.
Yeah, you tear through that whole thing, you disconnect a third of the root zone, the core of the root zone on that one side.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful to understand.
I agree, it's a beautiful tree, but we gotta weigh, like you said, you got the city industry going in.
Yeah.
Better-
It's an impressive tree.
It is.
Is it an unusual species?
It's
No.
a species, there's a lot of really great things about this tree. It's a native tree, it's really valuable for habitat and for bank stabilization, and so it's a really great tree from a wildlife standpoint. There are lots of them that grow along the Willamette River and, the other tributaries, so it's not uncommon. But it is a tree that is very decay prone. So if it has limb failures or root damage, the tree really does not compartmentalize those things very well. So it tends to become hollow, or it just decays and breaks apart pretty easily. So it's great for habitat. It's a really great spot to have that tree, since there's nothing really around it.
Mhm.
But it's one of those trees that if you start doing things like trenching or compacting the soil, or making large pruning cuts on it, you're gonna run into issues down the road because of that.
Okay. Good to
And it doesn't have a lot of breaks in it, considering its size and its age. It's pretty much unbroken, at least up in the upper canopy anyway.
Okay, if you guys could look
We will
into
do some
that.
homework and get back to you.
There's a price in the master plan,
For,
boring.
oh, really?
There's a price in the what?
Master plan.
All right.
And
Now
that's-
you have some homework too.
That's a start.
All right, that brings us to the final issue, as far as I know, which is when we would get together next. And we had discussed quarterly when we initially set this up, but this was actually done in preparation for Arbor Day, which is in April, which is next month.
Next week.
Yes.
Or Next day.
So I'm wondering, I'm fine whenever you'd like to meet. I'm fine with meeting annually if you want to meet annually to consider trees. I don't know how many trees we're going to have nominated if it warrants meeting more than once a year.
Mhm.
I think we do want to reconvene to figure out what to do with this one tree.
Would you guys just rather to convene, or would you want just an email saying? I mean, you guys can still vote via email, right? I mean, or do we have to meet to talk about this tree again?
Well, since
It's up to
it is a publicly noticed meeting, I think we would have to meet to discuss it, although it would probably take 20,
10
30
minutes, yeah.
minutes.
I think if you get some pertinent information and send it out by email, that'd be great. But I do agree with you. Maybe we can do it next quarter. I mean, the tree's not going anywhere in the next 3 or 4 months.
And we're
So,
not building our water plant for a while either.
yeah. So I think we have some time to play with. I don't think we need to like get together 2 weeks from now and talk about this. So I think, in June or something like that, I think it'd be fine.
Okay,
I have a follow-up question. Is that tree within the city limits?
Yes,
So with this tree and the tree, possible removal of trees in that area, is that something that's gonna come before the tree board as well?
I doubt it. It's city infrastructure that's going in. I don't know that it will come before the tree board.
it was discussed pretty extensively before the council.
Mhm.
This tree?
Yes. They,
Not that tree.
This area of
Tree
trees.
removal.
yeah, not this street, no. Trees along the east side of Ninth. And the potential removal because the berm that's going in. And there was quite a lot of discussion.
And about the intake too, like in general, not about a particular tree. Like it wasn't noted that there was a potentially 150-year-old tree that was going to be where the intake was, but it was discussed that there are a bunch of trees, as Gary said, that are going to need to be removed to put the intake in.
And the tree board isn't involved in any of this?
I don't think so.
it's a council level.
Yeah.
Now, if memory serves, this tree's well out of the riparian zone as well, isn't it?
I don't
I
know.
don't know how close to the river is it?
50 feet back from high water.
At least that, it's quite a ways.
Of course, high water of the Marys could be
Yeah.
halfway to town.
What year are you talking about?
Yeah, right. I think, average high water mark.
The river has shifted multiple times. I mean, I've been here 20+ years. It's way different than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. But you
Yeah,
So I
think,
think the riparian shifts with the channel.
That is considered the waterway. It's not a high mark or a floodplain, it's the waterway, so.
oh,
Right.
yeah,
What changes if it is within 50 feet of the river?
It's supposed to be no touch. It's supposed to be left wild. According to the state of Oregon and NOAA, and I think another federal agency, I forget which one. But it's with regard to fish habitat and water temperature.
right.
Are there any other trees that should be left alone based on that?
I'm sure during our environmental study, they'll.
Yeah,
somebody
we
will
have the
identify
permitting
those.
and our engineers,
There's-
everybody that's already weighed in on it.
Mhm.
It's been through all the permitting processes.
There've been a lot of dogs in the fight on this already, so.
Are there? Okay. Okay.
We're entering the final round.
So the intake, these pipes that are gonna be coming up in the pump house, how close to the river will that pump house be? Is it like right on the river
The
or?
current ones are right on the river. There's an intake out in the river.
Mhm.
They actually have like a little filter out in the river and it draws from that up to this pump station. So what's it, one now, like 10 feet out or?
Probably off the bank.
I don't know, it's-
Okay.
It'll be within 10 feet or so.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts before we close? All right, it's been a pleasure meeting everyone. We'll wait and look forward to hear back from Gary and Kevin regarding the last tree.
I'm sorry, Ken. Really quick, I wanted to mention about the photos. As far as like, actually two things. One is the photos. Some of these photos are beautiful and some of them are not so beautiful. What should we do about not great photos?
Did you take the beautiful ones?
No, I took, no, can't take anything. Oh, well, I took one, not bad.
Did you take the ones of the oak?
I didn't take the snow one. I took the other one with my phone.
Oh, okay.
This one I took. But I think the one in the snow, that's gorgeous.
That
didn't take
is
that.
gorgeous.
I love that. I think this one is really nice
The sequoia.
because it's got the school in the back, blue cloud. That's a nice photo, right? But like you were saying, the one at 15th and Applegate, those are all,
Right. I think we
it's so
should.
much better looking. So I'm
Right.
not sure how we're gonna deal with that, because we want, if it's gonna be on the website or what have you, we
Right.
want these things to really pop. We want them to look as good as they possibly can.
It doesn't have to be like a professional photo. I mean, I
No.
think just like a bright sunny
Like,
day.
yeah,
With
well,
plenty of
yeah,
light and
yeah.
enough,
When was
distance
that?
from the tree that you can capture the shape
The
of
whole
the
thing.
tree, that's really.
Mhm.
The other
I
thing-
think that it's cool having the close-up picture to see the structure, but I think that that's maybe less useful for the website because.
Right.
know,
You wanna be able to
honest, people are like,
identify it
Oh, there's
from
an
the block,
interesting
yeah.
tree there, go check it out.
Mhm.
And I think getting just kind of that broader picture of like, oh, it's that one over there is probably a little bit more helpful.
Okay.
I mean, if there's a chance to have multiple photos, sure, a close-up one's great, but I think that the wider angle ones, if you have to pick one photo for a tree, I would want to widen
Yeah.
the picture.
I'm sure we could drum somebody up to go and snap some good pictures of all these trees, and then maybe we can all get back together and like lay them out and just like, yeah, that one. and that one.
That's.
I'd
Also,
be
things
happy
like
to.
the elm, these are all really nice, but that tree looks so beautiful when it's leafed out.
I
Yeah,
know.
And it's
I
like,
know.
do we want to
Yeah.
wait until
Well,
spring?
exactly.
and get a nice, like,
That's my first thought was like, oh, we've got all these deciduous trees
I
over
bet somebody's
there.
got a drone and some pictures of it too.
What's that?
Somebody's probably got a drone. That'd be cool to
Oh.
check out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know if we talked about the frequency of meeting, or I don't know if we close that, but to me, this is something that should happen at least annually. I don't think that
Yeah.
there's really enough trees that are waiting to be approved, that it needs more than that. And so I think it's a great activity for an Arbor Day, celebration and something to recognize as a part of that. And if we're doing this again in a year, we can take some good pictures this summer and then update the website with those once we have good pictures too. I don't think that we necessarily have to wait for that just to. Like we could use the pictures we have now and update that down the road if needed.
Judging based on commentary and the number of trees we had today, it may be good to put in a caveat and say we had, we get 6 trees nominated for a year, which are, I'm sure, is something like that. We can meet every year.
right, if there is a bunch of them.
As this with the community we have around here, I imagine that once it becomes more known, we're probably gonna have a lot more nominations. But,
Yeah.
Who knows?
We talked about doing something on Arbor Day, or less than a month away from Arbor Day this year. There's a lot of planning needs to happen between now and then. How are we gonna deal with people this year?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's got to put this together and.
Yeah, the chairman of this committee should definitely assign some people to do that.
Well, I mean, I'm already doing one thing with all the children. We're doing another one at the Skirvin Park. If these are a part of that, we need to, somebody needs to let us know what they want. The city's involved, because some of these are city trees, like the one here at the library.
Mhm.
What is going to have to happen between now and April 28th, which is our.
I would, for next year, just given things that need to happen, and whatever that is, this is our first time, so obviously. But this feels a little rushed to me. It might be nice if we had these nominations in rather by January or February, so we had a couple of months, so whatever we end up doing to acknowledge these.
Sure.
We're not like, which is where we are now.
I mean, what is our next steps? We notify these people, say, oh, your trees,
I think it goes to council, doesn't it?
does it still gotta go to council?
I
think so.
don't know that it does.
So,
Well, if it does, even that were the case, so do we call this person on 15th Street, and say, hey, your tree's good to go by your sign and thank you, or, I mean, what do we do? I don't think that's a-
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
We need
It was
to.
kind of vague.
Yeah.
So I'm confused as the rest of you, so.
okay, so my understanding is that I thought Chris or somebody from the
City Hall.
city staff would be here to represent that department, but there are to be certificates of some sort, which I was told
on a
they were
plaque,
making.
right?
I think we did choose a format for certificates.
Oh.
I think. 'cause
Yeah,
I
we
think
did.
Oh,
looked
no,
at-
you mean the thing that we did?
Yeah,
Yeah, but then that information got taken to someone in the office, and I haven't seen anything since, so I assume that's been done or will be shortly.
Sure.
well, why don't
So
I
we'll
check
have
with
those.
city staff? I'll check with Chris or Chelsea and find out where they are with certificates and what can be done about plaques. Because we did talk about plaques and how they might be mounted. And perhaps I should just revisit our meeting minutes from the last meeting.
No, but you're right, but I think for the Arbor Day thing, if we want to present the new heritage trees, I think it makes sense to have plaques. I mean, I'm sorry, certificates ready to go. Invite the people who own them, if they want to come to receive them.
Mhm.
The ones in the city, I don't know, announce them in some way.
Sure.
I don't know, I mean, even if people want the physical plaques, it's gonna take longer,
Yeah,
right? We can't, there's no way we're gonna have them ready, which again would be nice to have. In the future, it'd be nice to have everything like in the bag by the time.
Right.
The end of April rolls
We
around.
could just
So
make an
next-
announcement at Arbor Day. Hey, we started a heritage tree program. Here are the first 4 trees and, you know,
That's actually a great
just a
idea.
picture and an address, but then like for the next year, then now we have like maybe a map with a walking or you know,
Totally.
whatever.
I love that
Yeah.
idea.
Put it in the next.
I think
issue for this
Notifying the
newsletter.
property owners that their tree was selected prior to Arbor Day and inviting them to come to the ceremony to receive a certificate.
Yeah.
And then during whatever part of that, we just have someone, maybe one of us, talk for 5 or 6 minutes about these trees, you know, just kind of like we learned so much cool stuff about the history of these
Right.
trees.
Absolutely.
Just share a brief synopsis of that for each tree and then award that certificate to the
That's a
person.
nice
there.
idea.
And if they're not there, then you just mail it to them or drop it off or whatever. And then, you know, after that, we work on getting plaques on the ground.
Good idea.
and that sort of.
This year's nominees are blah, 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 and this tree is cool because of this. Give it a minute.
that sounds like a volunteer. Could you do that?
I mean, is that truly gonna come from the heritage tree?
Yeah.
People that are sitting on this side of the table, that was gonna speak, or Is it Graham or Dwayne?
I think it's Graham. It sounds like Graham.
They talk about it.
Sure, about trail.
Is Mark Barnes doing anything with you for Arbor Day?
Mark Barnes?
Yeah, with integrated resource management over on College Street there.
Never had talked.
Well, the reason I was asking is I know obviously he's a big into forestry and all that stuff. And I know he has a drone, so I can go talk to him, see if maybe he could get some aerial pics for us.
Maybe we can have some pics, because the Arbor Day celebration, the big one the city's doing is down at Scrivener Park on April 28th.
Mhm.
So maybe we could have some kind of board made up,
Something like that, yeah.
with some pictures saying, oh yeah, this is the one on 15th and Applegate. This is the one down at the library.
Right.
Maybe if we get those pictures, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll give him a call tomorrow and see what he's got.
They're not leaked out. I agree with you on the elm tree.
Yeah,
That'd be beautiful. It's a lot more pretty when
Yeah.
it's leaked out.
There's gotta be some pictures floating around of that tree.
I've probably taken hundreds of pictures of it over the years, but I can't know where I did with them.
And lastly, also for the website, when on the Heritage Tree website, I assume whatever ones get chosen will be on there. There needs to be a blurb.
Right.
Who is gonna write the blurb? I don't know if that's. I felt like Chris wanted all of that stuff done in-house, like. But I keep saying, I don't want the staff to do any more than they need to, so if
Mhm.
people will volunteer for that. I'd be happy to.
Do you want to draft a blurb?
I can, but again, I don't want to step on any toes, and if they want that to be there, if they want to do that, then that's fine, but that is something that needs to be done. And I feel like the blurbs need to be
ready to go soon.
I think it
that,
would
but
be
they also
something-
need to be of the same, like the
Like
things that people.
follow
wrote are
the same
cool, but-
format. Yeah,
Exactly, we
Yeah.
want to have the same,
yeah. I don't think we have any toes yet for anyone to step on. So I think if you wanted to do that, no one would take that the wrong way.
No, I think it would be real helpful because Chelsea's the only one that can program in some phone numbers for me. And she said she's so busy, she's not gonna do it till probably July. Seriously, so if somebody can help out and write something, take some of the pressure off
yeah.
the staff, that would be.
Is there someone who is responsible for like the website management and adding pages, editing pages?
I think
I
Ruth
think
is the one.
Ruth and Chelsea do.
Okay. Is that, so like, I'm imagining that like one part of it is the content creation of getting the pictures, getting the text, just the information together. And then someone needs to make that look nice on a website. And that portion I could see, if there's like a way that you guys are doing that and someone in-house is doing that, then maybe that's a good thing to hand over. If
Yeah.
that's not the case, I'm sure that we can find someone, my roommate's a web developer, I'm sure he would be happy to create a cool page. But if that's gonna if that's not gonna work well with whatever your
Sure, and you want to make
website
it,
is, how it's functioning now.
right, you want to make it look like it's
make it-
part of the website, not just like a standard.
Sure, if it needs to be hosted in the same place and all that kind of.
Yeah, I think if we could give them the information, they can incorporate it. And I know that Ruth has an assistant who's doing a great job with that kind of thing.
Okay.
But if we could get all the information together, I think that would be incredibly helpful. They're pretty swamped with streetscapes and other things.
Yeah.
So is somebody notified? We talked about notifying property owners. Somebody from the Heritage Tree gonna do that via email or knock on their door or?
Let me check with Chelsea and see what's up with certificates, if we can get those certificates.
I'm just talking about the notification. Are we doing the notification?
If I have the contact info for them, I can call
I
them.
think everything's on your.
They're all on the things.
on the packets.
Oh, that's great. Sure. I can do that.
So are we notifying the property owner or the nominee? Because some of them were,
Well,
we don't have to call the city because we already know.
all right,
Thank you.
you're off the list.
Appreciate it. So basically it should be what, 2 other trees?
Yeah, there's only
Yeah, Carolyn and
Carolyn and Rachel.
In the museum.
the museum, yeah.
Contrary to belief, the city doesn't. own it.
I was gonna say,
What?
that's
It
what I
has nothing
see,
to
yeah.
do with-
We spent a lot of time talking about what they should do with their land.
We don't own a museum tree.
Okay.
Wasn't it sort of clandestinely placed or planted?
Oh, is that?
I think
They
it
woke
is-
up one
I
morning
think
and
it
there's
is
a big
planted.
tree in their yard.
Not one of the museum.
Disappointed in the museum.
I don't think it was clandestine, no.
There's a lot of giant sequoias that get brought home from school in a cup and planted. And cut down 50 years later, so.
That was planted as a real large tree.
It was, yeah, it was only like 12 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Was that because of the other Christmas tree that was removed?
Right,
Is
yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
was the response to that?
Yeah.
Is that what it was planned for?
Huh?
Is that what it was planned for?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, because, well, I mean, everyone's used to having that other one, and then we had 2 years without a Christmas tree, and then the Chamber of Commerce, I think, was instrumental in gathering all the momentum around planting that tree, but it was, yeah, it was pretty big when it went in,
I wonder how much it's grown since then. Be cool then.
a foot a year,
I
evidently.
know. Yeah. It'd be neat if there were pictures of it, like, as a baby,
I'm sure there are.
baby or,
Well, it was probably in a nursery for a long time.
no, I know, but I'm saying, like, the first year it was planted.
Oh,
I wonder
I'm
if
sure
there's
It
a
didn't
photo
be a
of it.
baby then, not a big baby.
Right,
A teenager.
a child.
All right, anything else before we adjourn?
I tried to adjourn 20 minutes ago, and I'm like, wait.
No, that's all right. I tend to adjourn prematurely, so feel free. Are you sure?
Going once.
All right, then I will probably reach out to all of you depending on what Chelsea has to say. And you're going to contact the heritage tree people.
I do remember on the plaques, we discussed that was gonna be up to the property owner.
Right, if they wanted to purchase the plaque, but they're all gonna be conform to the same design, right? Yeah,
Because I'm sure we'll put one out for the elm tree.
right. Absolutely.
You know, we should get that done, probably fund it through the council, I'm sure.
Before they start doing the concrete sign right there.
Maybe after. But it would be good to have one done so people know what it looks like and how much it costs.
I will work with-
Is
I'll
the
work
plaque
with that.
something that's mounted like on a post in the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our goal, is you were here at the meetings, was we're gonna put like a 6x6 or something of that size, cut it at an angle.
Great.
And put a brass plaque on.
That's great.
Maybe not brass, they might steal it, of some material that is gonna last.
Copper.
Some
Like
inexpensive but long lasting.
Some that's gonna last more than a day or two, but not be so valuable that they'll steal it.
and not embedding it in the tree.
Not, yeah, no.
No, it would be in the tree.
Great.
Okay,
And I'll talk to Mark and see if we can get some awesome aerial pictures.
cool.
So with that, all of you guys are invited to the Arbor Day celebration, on April 20th.
Nice.
What time
What's
was
the
it?
time?
It's like
We'll talk
9:30
about it at the tree board meeting, but I can't remember.
9:30 to 12:30. something like that.
It's a long one. We're planting a couple trees.
Nice.
Thank you very much.